Blah. Oh, are you still hanging on the cliff? Are you still hanging on by your fingers? Are they getting white with numbness as you grip the rock, trying to pull yourself back up off of the ledge? It it's really not that big of a deal. It was just a natural place to leave off in the conversation with John Christ, where we were discussing the Night of Hate demo. You'll see what he says about that recording. It's amazing. John's ability to recall. I mean, here is a guy who had been through some serious trauma, and yet his mind is an iron trap, man. And he just takes us through. We hear more of his recollections as he leads us into the recording of Danzig 1, particularly a revelation that I personally wasn't familiar with. And listen, I like to think that I'm more well-versed in like misfits stuff than I am Danzig stuff. My Danzig knowledge is limited compared to, I think I'm more well-read and well-studied on misfits things. And I did not know. I'm not going to say what it is. I'll let him say it. I thought it was kind of a revelation. Maybe he's spoken about it in other interviews, but that was the first time that I had ever heard about the Danzig 1 recording before Danzig 1. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And joining us in the conversation in the co-pilot seat is special guest co-host, Mr. Ace Von Johnson. And it's so great to have Ace with us as we take this journey exploring John's career and just hearing all of his, detailed musings about the music and the those times and whatnot. In this next part of the conversation, John really starts to get more in depth about his working relationship with Rick Rubin and sort of paints Rick Rubin in a light that I never really saw him before. We've heard a lot about Rick thus far, but I mean, he really sort of just shades what his dynamic was within Danzig, even more so than he has already. So that's pretty interesting to hear. I also would like to mention the Patreon and the YouTube memberships. Yes, this is the one time where I really get on my little soapbox and I talk a little bit about what that is. So for all of the videos that I have on my channel, there is also a secret archive of videos that are not public. The only way to see them is to become a member. And at this point, I have stockpiled hours and hours of exclusive content, building a catalog for exclusive listening and watching. So if you like this channel, if you like this channel's content, if you can't get enough, if you somehow, by some miracle, want even more, then you can get it by signing up and joining as a member. The money that's generated from these memberships goes directly into the Frumess operations, allowing us to do the good work that we do here at the Frumess channel. Who is the we? I always say there's no we, it's just me, but it just sounds better when it's we. I don't want to say I, it's better to just say we. We. So sign up. I'm constantly putting stuff on there. So not only are you getting new secret show stuff, but there's also the whole back catalog, as I just mentioned. There's nothing better than waking up, opening up your electronical device, whether it's a phone or a computer, and getting that notification in your email saying, boom, here's another fresh show for you. Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't watch wrestling, but this is me trying to do Macho Man. I lost it. I'm sorry. I don't know what I tried. Additionally, I know as well that Ace Von Johnson has a Patreon. He does all sorts of content, man. Go check that out. And of course, especially make sure you check out all things John Christ at johnchrist.com. Make sure you follow him on Instagram. Make sure you follow him on Facebook. Make sure you follow John on Twitter. He's making moves, man. He's making moves. I don't know if he has an email list yet, but if he does, you should sign up for it. Subscribe to the YouTube, not just mine. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. You can find all of the links of the things that I'm mentioning down below in the description. So make sure you do that. Oh, and one more thing, if you have not done already, please make sure to leave me a skull down in the comments. I need your skulls. They are important. I want to hang them on my wall. So leave me your skulls down in the comment, down in the live chat. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you are leaving comments, and make sure you have liked this video so that it gets boosted in the algorithm. Jeff, roll the commercial. Roll the commercial.
Get it, Chuck.
So
what else? What other documentation do you have on that particular gem?
okay, if you want more information on that, let me see. Actually there is more slightly, ever so slightly more information on that. I'm going to tell you right now in 2.0 seconds. No, don't hold me to that. Don't hold me to that.
Two.
No, that's not allowed. Hold on, I'm trying to find it.
I mean, it's definitely the coolest cult song that Billy Duffy did not write.
Right. So that's obviously it's after we've been working with Ruben, and it's going to be in one or two studios. It's either going to be in hang on. Oh shoot. There's a rehearsal studio called Zounds that was right near Lodi. It was the next town over, so just on the edge of Lodi, near Route 46. That's where we met our front of house mixing engineer, Rick Dittamo, that was with us forever. He worked there, and he started doing sound for us at the first shows. The only other place it could be, because you can tell it's a small room, right? It's not a big open space. It's pretty tight, and that would have been recorded on a boom box.
Yeah,
I think
Sounds like it. Like it.
One of those dual cassette deals, because they didn't have CD players yet that were that small, so everything was high speed dubbing stuff, right? So that was our demo deck, and that actually doesn't sound like a demo to me. That sounds just like a rehearsal tape, that we were just capturing it because we were fucking around with it, and put it in there. But I can tell by a couple of the little fills that it was probably in the works for presentation to George and Rick. And I say George and Rick because George Triculi was always with Rick Rubin back in those days, right? This is pre-Black Crows. This is still Def Jam, Elizabeth Street, Greenwich Village. That's how long ago it was. So we recorded stuff there until we got kicked out for drinking during the day. And we just had a little too much fun, because Ruben was in LA and we were rehearsing 3 times a week, and Glenn would show up twice a month. We got bored, so
here's what it says about it. It's an unreleased, so it's a rehearsal from 1987, and here are the other songs that were part of that rehearsal. It was Twist of Cain, Am I Demon, Possession, When Death Had No Name, Trouble, Soul on Fire, and Night of Hate.
Okay, so that was then very late, right before we started recording the first record. Because the record, so it came out what, October 88 or something like that?
August 88.
August 88, right, August 88. We hit the road. October we went, why am I saying October? Oh, we were in Scotland with Metallica. That's right. So we did shows July, August with Slayer, LA, Chicago, Detroit. So that recording could have actually been done, because it's a little cleaner, could have been done in Top Hat Studios on 28th Street in New York. I don't know if that's still there or not, but it was one of the Aerosmith guys on it. I think it was Tommy Hamilton, but I'm not sure. So you might have to look that up. But again, we used 2 different rooms over there. most of the time. And, you know, one sounded like shit, the other one sounded less like shit, but they were good rehearsal rooms. And if it was that late in 87, because we did 2 major sessions for that first album. One was in a place called Sorcerer Sound in New York. And we did a whole bunch of tracking there and threw it all away. I told you that before, right?
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't know
okay.
that either.
So they're in Eerie's book, right? Misery Obscura. There's a picture of all of us in a control room sitting, you know, we're leaning on the mixing desk, right? It's a big Neve or SSL or something like that. And we're all turned around the other way. I got the poodle hairdo and all that. And, you know, Glenn's got like either a wrestling magazine or a Playboy or something. And we're all sitting there. And that was Sorcerer Sound. And it was a real neat kind of modern looking studio. And I know we were there for a week, and it was all trying to get the drum sounds and drum grooves right. I remember that the only number I can pull from that was 45 takes of Twist a Cane.
What?
Woof.
That we had for drums and tracking, and we scrapped the whole session. It was right before the holidays, and we thought it was going okay, but everything was work, you know. Getting, you know, the drums was the main thing. The room was probably too small for whatever reason, notwithstanding. I remember we had a good time in there. We worked really hard, but it just something didn't feel right with it. And we broke for Christmas. When we came back, it was just like, now we're scrapping it. We're going to start again. Problem was, though, by that time, Rick Rubin was already music director for the film Less Than Zero in LA. So he was constantly flying out to LA, working on the music out there and doing all this kind of stuff. And we could only get him when he was in town. So that just like, boom, you know, we came to like a dead stop there for months. So everything, now the upside of that was we'd been in the studio, we tightened everything up, still in rehearsals, probably recorded a bunch of tapes just like that, and worked out some different stuff. So when Rick came back, we didn't even work on our stuff. We just jumped into the studio to do Less Than Zero and You and Me and all that crap as part of, you know, the Roy Orbison thing happened. Roy came to town. He was playing out on Long Island. We went to see him, met him backstage, blah, 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 blah.
Well, hold on. Wait. I just want to interject super quick. What was it like? Tell me about meeting Roy Orbison before we continue.
So, what was really funny is we went to the show on Long Island, and it was just the band, and we showed up, and we were like in the front row or second row, and we put our feet up on the seats and everything. And oh shoot, wait a minute, it was not Jerry Lee Lewis, it was the other guy, Blue Suede Shoes, who wrote
Carl Perkins.
Carl Perkins was opening up for Roy Orbison. Yeah. We got there and Carl Perkins was playing, and we were just like right up front when Roy Orbison came out, and it was spectacular. He was. I don't really remember much else about the rest. I was glued to him the whole time. You know, they had the big Phil Spector timpani drums and all that kind of stuff, but it was the voice. Everything was just about his voice, you know. And black shirt, big thick horn rim glasses, you know, black Gibson Jumbo acoustic guitar. I think maybe he played a Telecaster, a couple of things, and it was just like, you know, his voice was so pure it made you want to cry, you know. But we were too cool to cry, right? Yeah. But we got backstage, and he was married to some young German chick that was his business manager at the time. and she was a little pushy. But he was gracious. We got a chance to meet him, and they were talking about the movie, and so that was great because we saw him one more time at the Channel in Boston. Did you ever play the Channel, Ace?
Oh, God, maybe 20 years ago.
Down on the docks. It's not
Yeah.
there anymore. I think it fell into the harbor or something.
I remember the venue. Yeah.
Yeah. So we saw him there. We were just crisscrossing, and that was like 2 weeks before he passed away.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was like one of his very last shows, and that was, that was a whole kind of like mind screw. It's like, man, we just talked to him last week.
Yeah.
We got the news, and that's always like the shock, of it. But yeah, so that whole thing in a way helped mold the band into a unit, because we started, everybody got excited about the Roy Orbison thing. And then Rick was like, yeah, why don't come in, record some stuff for us in the studio. And we were recording at Atlantic Studios, in Midtown. And it was like, holy shit, Chaka Khan was in the next studio across the hall.
Amazing.
We were going out to use the bathroom, and she's out there humming and testing lyrics and stuff. And I'm like, damn, this is, pretty cool. And you're always trying to go, don't say it, Chaka Khan, Chaka Khan.
Yeah.
Don't do it, Chuck, don't do it, don't. But so we really got into that, and we had a good time. And in our minds, we were thinking mindset that, okay, let's knock this out. As soon as we get it done, then Rick's going to be done, and he can work, get in and do our record for real. So it still took a few months after that, and everything was compressed. And we did a couple of pre-production rehearsals, and boom, right in.
So what made you, what was the, like, who made the call to scrap all that? Why scrap after 44 takes? It sounds like so much work and effort.
Rick. That was Rick. It didn't feel right. Didn't sound right. It didn't feel right. It wasn't big enough. Parts were fine. Performances were fine. A lot of amazing scratch vocals on that stuff, and drums too. But there was just something missing. And I think it was just,
oh shit. Holy shit, I just saw a rat. Fucking holy fuck. That scared the fuck out of me because you don't understand. I just saw something out of the corner of my fucking eye and it freaked the fuck out of me. Holy fuck. Oh, my wife is going to be so mad. She's going to be so good. Oh, did that fucking scare the crap out of me?
You have to throw away the pizza boxes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Corner.
I think so.
Go to Home Depot and pick up some of those humane rat traps and take them back outside.
Yeah, you got to text me how to get one of those, because my wife is going to fucking I'm going to have to tell her as soon as we get off here. I'm going to have to tell her about it, and she is going to have a shit fit.
Yeah, a rat in your house is not good.
It looked like a rat. It was big like a rat. It's somewhere behind me right now.
That's all right.
Do you need 30 seconds? Do you need 2 seconds to go look for it?
I'd rather, let's just keep going. I just put my feet up on a milk crate.
He needs 15 minutes to prepare before he talks to his wife. That's what he really
Oh my God. Wait, before you continue, I'm sorry for interrupting. Before you continue, one thing. I was on here doing a show, and it was when we had in 2021, we had like that Eastern, whatever, some big thunderstorm, rainstorm. Oh, yeah. I see my wife running back and forth off camera. You can't see over here. She's running back and forth, back and forth. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to zone it out because I'm with, it was the guy, I forget his name. He worked on Danzig's movie. He was the second AD on Danzig's Western movie. So we're talking about the movie, and all of a sudden I feel water hit the back of my heels down here. The whole basement behind me was flooded, and I was live on YouTube, and I had to go, guys, show's over. My basement's flooding. I gotta go.
That sucks, man.
We got through it. We were bailing out water till about 3 a.m. It was gnarly, but we got through it. But this rat is, I'm sorry to say,
it's a new pet, dude. You got a friend.
And it's funny because my son was just saying, Dad, can we get a dog, please?
You got a rat instead.
Here you go, buddy. Here's a fucking rat.
If you feed it enough, it can get as big as a dog almost.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's like a Chihuahua.
Exactly.
I've never been to Skid Row in LA, man. They're the size of cats down there.
Yeah.
I could only imagine. All right. So I'm sorry. So I actually interrupted you. I sidetracked you. You were talking about, you were leading into the recording of Danzig 1.
Yeah.
But I made you stop because I wanted you to talk about Roy Orbison. You were talking about Roy Orbison and then we were talking about the first, we were talking about the production.
The scrap session.
The scrap session.
Right,
You were just saying, okay, you were saying that there were great scratch vocals and drum parts. Was any of it from, again, asking you to jog your memory from decades ago, was any of it different, like noticeably different from what ended up on tape for the session?
Hey, we're back again for another break, and this time we're talking about our favorite stickering company, RIOTstickers.com. That's right, the place to get the stickiest of the sticky. If you need stickers for your artistic endeavors, Riot Stickers is the place to go. You're going to get 3-inch by 3-inch vinyl stickers, 1,000 of them for $79. That is an insane deal. The stickers are printed on vinyl, which makes them waterproof. They got this UV coating that protects them from the sun. These colors don't run, baby. There's nobody else you'd rather be dealing with than Sharpie Riot himself, the CEO of RIOTstickers.com. So check it out. That special deal is down in the description, RIOTstickers.com/Frumess. It's the only place you are going to be able to get this deal, 1,000 stickers for $79. Make sure you sign up. Make sure you get that special deal. All right, Jeff, roll the commercial.
Posters and promo cards, there's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. We are the bomb. RIOTstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. RIOTstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. RIOTstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
That's a good question. Yeah, I know it was because, the lyrics weren't even all complete yet. So there were going to be things that were changed, little things. I mean, not huge parts and all that. But, it was the thing where you get a couple of decent takes with the guitar, bass, vocals, and drums. And once you get a couple of good solid ones with the vocals, then Glenn goes into the control room, relaxes, and then the band stays in the live room and just bang it out, just keep bashing it out, bashing out. So, that way Glenn didn't have to like sing a song 10 or 15 times, in one night.
Sure.
Yeah.
Some things he would sing more than others because I don't know. That first record, there are an awful lot of screams, a lot of vocal screams, a lot of screaming. So he would get those down quickly, and once it felt good, then that was enough for the rest of the band, and then we could continue. Because sometimes we'd say turn the vocals off, or start with the vocals, and then once we get into the first chorus, just turn them off and we'll go, you know. And because it's at that point, it's all about the groove and getting the feel, you know. And at that point, as a band, we hadn't been together that long, so there's still a lot of visual communication between the drums, bass, guitar players, and all that. And in that particular studio, Chuck was in a booth behind glass doors, so it wasn't like I was 2 feet away from him and my guitar was in a booth somewhere, you know. It was kind of an odd setup. Maybe that contributed to it. I don't know, but in the long run, it was good because it was more reps, more practice, figuring out what we did like, what we didn't like, and where we were going. So, you know, it ended up working out for the better. I don't remember. I know that there were a lot of songs that didn't make it on that record, you know, and it was a When Death Had No Name was like, I remember the band, we all really liked that song a lot. And we recorded it and we were excited about it, and it didn't end up making it for whatever reason. I don't know.
Was it a B-side eventually?
Yeah, it came out on the year, but much, much later.
Around 3, maybe. I think.
Yeah, you did it 3 times in the studio.
Song live.
Yeah.
You know, we still played it live, even though it wasn't on the album, which was kind of weird. But yeah, you know, and it was a lot of fun to play. I mean, there's such great parts and everything. And I remember specifically, we were actually doing that in the studios in New York and in the rehearsal studios, and so it'd be interesting to see, you know, talk to Rick about it if he remembers, and Glenn what actually happened, you know, with a couple of those songs. Some of the other ones I know we cut them because they just weren't good enough. You know, Evil Thing was kind of it was like, okay, it was a good groove song, but to me it was like, it's not as good as When Death Had No Name, and you know.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of a Jeep Grand Cherokee commercial. Like you see the Jeep driving, the evil black Jeep driving through the Rocky Mountains.
If you need a smooth riding car, try a Jeep Cherokee.
Yes. Just like Diablos 88 too, same thing. Sorry.
Type of thing. But yeah, so that was an interesting period. There's an awful lot going on at that time, you know, because we were in there and he had already finished the Electric album with the Cult, and he was working, getting Slayer signed over, and there was another friend named Haggis that was a friend of Rick's, and he wanted to do like an AC/DC band. Because Rick was such a huge fan, and they were just going to put it together and see if they could make it work. And so that ended up coming together started in 89. Well, I know actually it was before that. It was 87, 88, because Chuck Biscuits' brother Dimwit moved in with us in Lodi.
Oh, wow.
They were starting to rehearse. So they had a band, they just didn't have a singer yet. And they were rehearsing in the city, and yeah, and it was the Montgomery brothers, boy. We were a motley crew.
What were they like together? Like, how much older is he than Chuck?
I think it was like 3 years, you know, 3, not more than 4. And I think Bob, because it was Chuck and Bob and Dimwit, and I can't remember if Bob was younger or older. I think Bob might have been 2 years, and maybe Dimwit was like 4 years older or something like that. And Bob was Chuck's drum tech for like years, you know, so we had 2 Montgomerys for a while there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then that, you know, the Four Horsemen, it was the band that Dimwit played with. And it's funny because the lead singer of that band, Frank Starr, was from my hometown. And I went to high school with his little sister who had a mad crush on. And when I moved to Hollywood, he and I ended up hanging out and working on muscle cars and stuff together, you know. And they were trying to get their record done and going on the tour and everything. And so we did a lot of hanging out. That's where Frank introduced us all to Ricky Rackman, because Ricky had the Cat House and the Bordello and all these clubs. It was well before Headbangers Ball started.
Yeah. He didn't join the Headbangers Ball till 1990.
Yeah, so it was later. So, but you know, so it was a pretty, the scene wasn't that big. There were a couple of different scenes in Hollywood at the time, but the scene with Ricky and that group of people were pretty, you know, they moved just a couple of places. The world was fairly small. And it was so funny because I moved to LA and it was like there was nothing happening on Saturday and Sunday. Everything happened on the weeknights.
Interesting.
It was hilarious. You know, it was like a bunch of vampires, you know, because Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights were just like slamming. But Friday and Saturday, just like nothing, just sucked. There's nothing happening out there. It was the weirdest thing. Completely opposite of the East Coast, you know.
Do you remember? Okay, how about this? We talked about how Mother started life in a much different, like, sort of with a much different sorry, let me say that again. We talked about how Mother started off as like a punk song with a much different sort of energy. Were there any other tracks, and we know what Possession sounded like before it became the Possession that's on Danzig. Were there any other tracks that started off radically different from Danzig 1 than what they became on the final album? And do you remember were you there when James Hetfield came into the studio to do backing vocals on Twist of Cain and Possession and stuff? Do you remember him coming into the studio?
Yeah, because I was singing with him.
Awesome. That's great.
One of the loudest voices in a room I'd ever heard. He could scream loud as shit, man. Definitely. So yeah, the other song that comes to mind, like Mother, man, so many different iterations because we could not get the chorus. Let's see. When we made one change to a verse, it threw the chorus off. When we made a change to the chorus, it threw the transition going back to the verse off. And we were thinking heavy, heavy, heavy. And Rick was like, no, think blues, think AC/DC, think slower. And I can remember when we were putting the chorus together, and Rick and I had some discussions about Malcolm Young, that kind of stuff. And he's like, just do Malcolm. And I'm like, you want straight block G chord, open A, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, just make it ring. You know. You know, it's like, and we would go back and forth. And it was like, okay, well, I'm going to do upstrokes on this accent, downstrokes on that, blah, blah, blah. So we would pick things apart like that. And then I remember it was like a combination of Chuck and Rick and George Trikulius putting in that drum fill at the end. Right? That took a village to get that freaking fill.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a team effort. You know, there was nothing spontaneous about that song at all. We picked it apart. So I freaking hated that song. for a while, because we were just trying to figure, and it was just like, it was a push-pull type of thing, because we were really just getting to know Rick.
Yeah.
He was just getting to know us, and we were just starting to spend some time, in the rehearsal room together. So it came, it started coming. Once we figured out where everybody was coming from and what each other's syntax and words meant.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, okay. And gradually the vibe came together. And it's so funny because I go back, and if you listen to the Cult Electric album and the Danzig album, it's like production is almost identical.
Yep.
Now I got to listen to this Cult album.
I have it dog-eared behind me, not because of this, but just because I love that record. And
it's a fun record.
I love putting them on back to back, actually, and just sort of being like, wow, this could be, maybe not vocally, but there are some similarities, at least.
So in that time,
it could be bookended.
Yeah. I've told this story dozens of times, but I can remember at least 2 different album sessions that we did with Rick, and he'd come in. The first thing he would do is, first day of drums, he would pull out the Back in Black CD, throw it on the desk to the engineer, and say, I want that kick and I want that snare sound.
Yeah.
And they would go for it. And it was so funny because when we heard the rough mixes for the first album, Chuck and I were roommates at the time, and I can remember we were going, is that snare drum actually distorted? Would it be possible? Could it just have been buzzing, Chuck? Was it just, and he's like, no, it's distorted. I'm like, how does that happen? Didn't they gate that? It's actually, and we were so freaking pissed about how bad the tones were on that record. We were like, oh my God, we're on a sinking ship. We didn't think it was ever going to work.
Yeah.
And we're like, it's so dry, man. It's so dry. It's like, yeah, there's compression on it, but using old hall reverbs and, old plates. And I'm going, phew. Because Def Leppard, White Snake, all these rich 80s, shit, fat productions, glam, hair bands, all that kind of stuff was going on in LA. And
never heard of it.
So much effects on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was it was around the time when Tammy got his first can of Aquanet, I think.
Yeah, it was 87, 88.
Yeah. And the LA thing was LA. So they were doing a different brand of cocaine out there, and everything had this high-end sizzle that came off of it, man. When we listened to it in the studio in the East Coast, it was like, Jesus, it's bright. They must be using some deaf engineers, or they're pumping out these mixes at the end of the session when their ears are gone.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to get it done. They've been in there for 14 hours or whatever it is, 15 hours, and they just need to get something decent. And, they're fried. Same thing happened with Rick Rubin. He'd be in the studio so much every single day that his ears wouldn't get a break. Ears were just fried. So the rough mixes that we got, it's like the high end was just like, it was like a 78 Les Paul into a Plexi Marshall full stack, and you're sitting down and the speaker's right at face level, and it's just like piercing. You just wince, and it's like, what the hell is going on with that?
You got it back the next day with fresh ears before you make any final decisions.
Yeah.
So,
but sort of sound, but
so let me ask you this now.
I kind of went on my own tangent.
No, that was amazing.
That's what we're here for.
Dude, that was, I'm trying my best just to let you sail because you're so good at it. I mean, I want to interject all the time, and I'm like, you just keep saying amazing things, and I just have nothing to, I just don't want to. And the Ray Orbison, I was like, I gotta pause him there because I gotta hear about Ray Orbison. But how about this? What about this? so you're recording this album, and what do you remember inside of the band, or maybe in talks with Ruben? Like, what is the overall feeling and agenda for recording Danzig? Because here's a guy who, prior to getting signed in this kind of way and, like, you know, working with Rick Rubin, has basically just carved his own path, like a complete and total self-realizer, which is one of my favorite qualities, and something that I take great, you know, admiration from, when, you know, in the music and workings of Glenn Danzig, which is why I'm so fascinated by his musical story, in that, hey, I'm going to do my own record label. I'm going to write my own songs. I'm going to do my own merch. I started this incredibly lucrative mail order merch business out of my parents' basement, yada, yada, yada. Now it's like a 180. It's like a dime 180, where we're signed and we're doing this thing, and it's like there's potential for it to go places. What was the atmosphere? What was the temperature at that time for, like, what Danzig was hoping to be or could have been, or what, or, you know, just all of that? Like, what was the atmosphere like?
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jeff. So I've decided to make a Patreon. What is Patreon? I don't know how to define a Patreon. Let me look it up. Patreon is a membership platform that makes it very easy for creators to get paid for the things that they're already creating. I want to do it full time. I want this to be my full-time job. In my efforts to make that happen, I've set up this platform. Is it going to work? Is it going to be successful? I don't know, but I would rather try and crash and burn than not try at all. The goal is to create enough passive revenue so that I can continue to do this full-time, uninterrupted. Why? Because I love to do this. I love creating content. I love making videos. I love shooting films. I love doing podcasts. In case you couldn't tell, I love to talk, and I never shut the fuck up. So right now, I've kept the Patreon incredibly simple. There's 2 tiers, and that may change in the future. The Murdergram is a simple way to extend support for all of the hours and hours of free content on the channel for nothing more than $1. 38 cents goes to Patreon. What's $1.38, eh? It's less than a cup of coffee, but it's a great way that you can show support for very little effort. When you divide that $1.38 by the hours and hours and hours of time spent listening to this endless drivel of content, the dollar cost average works out. Next up is the YouTube casualty for $6.66. The YouTube casualty is loaded to the gills. Enjoy the archive ad-free, as well as ad-free early access to special docu-style podcast videos, music reaction commentaries, and the like, a month before they drop on YouTube, loaded with ads, I might add. You're also going to get exclusive content and behind-the-scenes content that is not available on YouTube or anywhere else. So you get to peek behind the veil. And believe me, there's a couple of choice pieces. Most of all, more than anything, whether you join the Patreon or not, I just want to thank each and every one of you that comes to the channel, that watches all the shows, that leaves comments, that participates, that subscribes. That's really the most important thing. This is just trying to find a way to earn a living as an artist. And with that, thank you for my TED Talk. Join the Patreon, because we need you! 66 cents.
So, an unspoken, this is my opinion, unspoken realization on Glenn's part that he'd hit this glass ceiling. He was topped out. There's no way to punch through it the way he was going. And he needed help. He had the confidence, he had the drive, he had the desire, and the intensity, and things were changing, and Rick Rubin saw that. And Rick loves music probably more than anybody I've ever met. But it's not just the music itself. Like, I can dig into a piece of music, and just the way it's musically put together, melody, harmony, rhythm, all that kind of stuff, and just bam, I just dig in. Where when you talk to Rick, it's more about the artist and the composing and the vibe of the song and this and that, thing that surrounds the creative process among the musicians and the artists. So when I first met him, we were talking about guitar, favorite guitars, I mean, he's huge Zeppelin fan, huge AC/DC fan, respected, Beatles, Stones, all that kind of stuff, into hip hop, into pop, all that. He was eclectic, he was very eclectic. And he wanted to be a good guitar player really bad. He really wanted to play. But at some point it wasn't coming quickly enough, But he realized that he loved being around musicians, loved being around the creative process. And he would listen and he would watch and he would think. And he realized that he had a knack for refocusing musicians, pumping them up when they needed it, putting them out when they were getting a little too crazy, a little too wild. He has a great smile. He has a great little wink, little twinkle in his eye that he does, and he's very calm. He doesn't get upset easily, and he's all about the groove and about the vibe, right? So, and I was a sponge. I was 21 years old, 22 years old, and I just knew Beastie Boys, Run DMC with Aerosmith, Walk This Way. That was the extent of my knowledge of Rick Rubin. And after I met him, we were eating pizza, watching videos of Slayer, and Dave Lombardo was leaving, and he's asking me about drummers that I know and blah, blah, blah. And we're having a good time talking about all this kind of stuff. And we were discussing, every guitar player that I loved, Tony Iommi and Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, Angus Young, Ted Nugent, Tom Schultz, Boston, just everybody and what we liked about them and what, and that whole kind of thing and where we're going to go. And he asked me, he's like, "You're in school, right?" And I said, "Yeah, school was my plan B." Because I announced to my family and friends at the age of 10 that I was going to become a rock star and move to California when I grew up. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I hadn't done it yet. So, the parents are like, "Well, if you're going to stay here, you got to go to school, and all that kind of stuff." So I was like, all right. And I ended up in a jazz program studying with the guy who wrote the song Whiplash. Remember that movie Whiplash with Shia?
Right.
Yeah.
So the guy who wrote that crazy chart was my mentor. And he played sax in the Stan Kenton Orchestra and all that. And jazz stuff goes way back. But I was a heavy metal kid in the jazz program. But at least it was music. And it's funny because it was synchronicity in cliche, because I had to challenge my way to get into the program because they were locked out. They had like 42 guitar players, but they didn't have enough bass players. So I passed the audition, and then I auditioned on bass. They let me in the program, and then it was like, okay, we need bass players. So they slam me and all this stuff. The point of the whole discussion is my theory got accelerated at a high rate because I was a little bit behind the people that were already sophomores and all that kind of stuff. So I was cramming. I had to get up to speed, and I did. And so by the time I met Rick Rubin and Glenn and all these guys, my ear was like really trained. You know, I had my pitch was really good. My recall was really good. You know, I could hear a song on the radio, and if you gave me a piece of scrap paper, I could write out all the parts for you. You know, standard notation. And if you wanted it transposed or arranged for a horn section, I could do that too. So when I came to Samhain, it was like, oh my God, punk rock. I fucking hate punk rock.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, we used to fight punk rockers back home, you know, and now I'm in a room with them trying to impress them. And it was like, and they were not interested in what I was selling, you know, but the energy that I brought to it is what attracted Rick. And he saw, wait a minute, you know, this guy has an attitude that's different than everybody else that's tried out. I remember the whole story, how I got into the band. A friend of mine worked for a firm here in Baltimore, and his boss's kid was London May, who played drums in Samhain, blah, blah, blah. Rick Rubin saw them at a music seminar, said, you guys are great, but you got to get rid of the guitar player. I'll sign you if you get rid of the guitar player. They held auditions for 6 months, didn't find anybody. My friend came to me Christmas time again, said, hey, they still haven't found a guitar player. And by that time, the Walk This Way was out, Fight for Your Right to Party was out. You know, all this kind of stuff was already happening. I knew who Rubin was now. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll try out. And eventually, you know, got the gig. And one of the last conversations before I joined the band was like, I said, you know, Rick, I said, there's some really cool stuff in here, but I don't think my style, I forget how I worded it. I said something like, you know, I don't think my playing makes Glenn happy. I said, they thought I was on drugs when I came into the audition. And I said, no. I said, listen, I did the Van Halen rock out with my cock out thing. I was bashing cymbals with the headstock of my guitar, you know. I was going around and Eerie's bass was out of tune. So I'm playing and I'm tuning his bass up at the same time, you know, and just like took fucking control.
Yeah.
Whole audition. And it was just too much. It was just too much. At the time, I'd been waiting for 4 hours. I was the first one there, the last one to audition. I did not give a shit. By the time I walked in, I was just like, you know, I don't need these assholes. I'll just do my thing and get the fuck out of here and go home. And but Rick stopped me after, and he wanted to talk to me. And so that's when we went down to Electric Lady, and the Cult was in the studio tracking Born to Be Wild. And that was my first time in a big full-on studio, let alone Jimi Hendrix's studio, you know, with the purple carpeting and the tie-dye wallpaper and the platinum albums everywhere and the 6-foot blonde receptionist that was like a 10. You know, I was like, holy shit, how did I step into this? So I took, all of a sudden I got serious. I got real in a hurry.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick, man, you know, it was fun and all, but I don't think, you know, I made Glenn happy. And he goes, what makes me happy will make Glenn happy.
Interesting.
I said, obviously you're the man. So what do you want to do? He said, you come back in a month and we'll go from there. He goes, I think you're cool. I like, you know, your roots, where you're coming from. And you know, and yeah, maybe you came on a little strong, but
It got you the gig.
Yep. It got me the gig.
Wow. So,
so to answer your question completely,
Yes.
So when we're in the studio and I'm talking to Rick and we're talking about guitars and we're talking about sounds. So there are many different focuses. There's focus on sounds, on tones, before you even get to the performance of tracking, right? His number one focus is it's got the rock and roll drum part has to be a complete rock and roll song when you listen to drums with the rest of the track blazing, he was able to isolate every kick drum, every hi-hat, every snare strike, every nuance of a nudge ahead or behind the beat or whatever. And he would just go into his little Zen-like thing and rock back and forth for hours, just listening. And I'm going, what the hell is he doing? You know, because I was new. I didn't know. I listened a completely different way. And remember, I'm listening to pitches. I'm theoretical. I'm theory. I'm in two staffs, right? In my mind, that's what I'm seeing, what it looks like visually. You know, everything that I'm hearing can be placed on a bass clef and a treble clef. Well, he's listening from a completely different perspective. So we had to find that common ground. And then when we started to, I said, you know, Rick, I think this can be really great, but I don't have the equipment to get the sound that we're going for. And he said, all right, you talk to Lisa Shark and go to Sam Ash, 48th Street.
Right.
I'll tell somebody in the record company to call her up and you get whatever you need. And so I went and got guitars, I got amps, I got all kinds of shit, and went into Chung King Studios down in Chinatown, you know, a rap studio down there, Steve Ett, engineer. And it was this small little Neve board, and he ran the shit out of this thing, man. You know, these little 3-channel EQs and stuff, the 6520s or whatever the hell they are. And the shit would be blowing up and crackling, and people bring in other parts and swap, and they're like gutting this board, right? But that's how they were, you know.
Like the Millennium Falcon is what it sounds like.
Yes, exactly. It was a Millennium Falcon, and the tones, the sounds that this guy got out of it were just like amazing. And so, you know, talking to Rick about what we're trying to go for and the groove and the tightness and all that, we came to a common ground of, okay, you know, it's going to be super heavy and it's going to be super aggressive, but it's not going to be super distorted. We want it on the edge of breakup all the time, but barely under control. Barely under control. And I said, okay, well, here's the thing, Rick, sorry. The way that we play these in the rehearsal room, I'm not going to be able to play it that way because it's not going to be in tune when it goes down on tape. So where do we push the envelope? And so I worked really hard with the studio engineers on getting the sounds and all this kind of stuff, and recording layers of guitars with completely in phase, out of phase, blah, 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 and this layering, thickening process, so that I was able to, some tracks I had to lay off and play easy. Other tracks I could play incredibly aggressively. Typically, that was going to be at the end when you came back for overdubs and solos and all that. You would do what we called hot tracks. Didn't matter if you kept it or not. Get whatever the sound the freaking stupid lead guitar player wants to get with all the feedback, squeals, and all that. And if there's something usable, we'll mix it in just at the certain spots, you know, for highlights. And that worked out really well. But during that first album process, I learned how to listen, and I learned how to hear the whole frequency range between the parts, and what microphones did, and what speakers did, and what EQs did, and, you know, and Rick didn't have to tell me. His job, once we got there, was to coax the performance and to judge whether he would say, it's almost there. It's almost there. One more, just one more, you know. And Rick became a huge ally for me because 2-3 records in, you know, the other guys thought everything they did was great. And I'm like, Rick, man, it's not there. You know, it's not good enough. We can do way better. And he's like, I know. I'm like, they're not listening to me. You know, we gotta
Wait, that was on later records, or that was
Later
still Danzig one?
That was all later records. Later records.
Gotcha.
I'm so sorry we've run out of time for today, but don't worry, there is more to come. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for the very next installment and see what else we discuss, because boy, we have hardly scratched the surface with John, man. We haven't even launched into Danzig 2 yet. We haven't even launched into Danzig 3 yet. We haven't even launched into Danzig 4 yet. I'm probably going to say this exact same thing at the end of the next episode, whenever that may be. In case you didn't know, we're also doing 31 days of Halloween recently on the channel. Make sure, if you're into horror movies, if you like horror movie stuff, go and watch some of those videos. Check out what I've been watching. Check out what some of the people in the audience have been watching and going back and forth, comparing notes and this, that, and the other. It's kind of a fun new element of 31 days of Halloween. I'm not going to explain to you what it is, but it's definitely worth your time if you are a fan of horror movies. A big thank you again to John Christ, to Ace Von Johnson. We will see you next time. Peace, hair grease, you know the rest. All right, Jeff, roll the end thing.